The morning sun cut a sharp, golden line across the kitchen floorboards. It warmed the wood, but the room remained cold. Ashley stood by the counter, the silence of the house pressing in. She pulled the pantry door open. The shelves were bare. Not a single grain of rice, not a stray crust of bread. The wood of the shelves felt hollow under her fingertips. She leaned in, checking the corners, hoping for a forgotten tin or a stray packet, but found only dust and shadows. The hunger was a quiet, persistent ache in her stomach. She turned back to the kitchen table and picked up her canvas tote bag. The fabric was rough and worn, its weight negligible in her hand. She shook it out, the material snapping in the morning air, and looped the strap over her shoulder. The house felt too quiet now. She walked to the front door, her boots clicking against the hard floor. She reached for the handle, pushed the door open, and stepped out into the bright, morning light. The path to the town market lay ahead. She started walking, the empty bag swinging against her side. The street noise grew from a low hum into a roar as Ashley approached the town square. She rounded the final corner and the market hit her like a physical wave. The air here was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth, crushed herbs, and the sharp, sweet tang of ripening fruit. Vendors stood behind wooden stalls, their voices overlapping in a frantic, rhythmic chant as they shouted prices over the heads of the crowd. Ashley pushed forward, her boots scuffing against the uneven cobblestones. A merchant shoved a crate of greens past her, forcing her to sidestep sharply. She steadied herself, her hand brushing against a stack of wooden crates. Every direction offered a new assault on the senses. To her left, mounds of deep red tomatoes sat under the harsh sun. To her right, crates of leafy greens spilled over the edges. The sheer volume of produce was dizzying. She moved deeper into the square, weaving through the throng of shoppers. She stopped for a moment, letting the crowd flow around her like water around a stone. She took a breath, the earthy smell grounding her, and looked up at the wall of color surrounding her. She was in the heart of the market now. Ashley turned away from the main thoroughfare, seeking a quieter aisle. The crowd thinned, leaving her in a narrow corridor between two rows of weathered wooden stalls. The air here was cooler, smelling faintly of pine and dry soil. She took a step, then stopped. A soft, rhythmic hum vibrated through the soles of her boots. It was a low, steady thrumming that seemed to sync with her own heartbeat. She looked down. A cart tucked into the shadows of a stall was changing. A faint, golden light began to bleed through the gaps between the wooden slats. It was not a steady glow, but a pulse, a rhythmic, golden expansion that brightened and dimmed with precise, mechanical timing. She leaned closer, her hand outstretched, but she did not touch the wood. The light intensified, casting long, flickering shadows against the cobblestones. The shouting of the vendors seemed to recede, muffled as if by thick glass. She took another step, her eyes locked onto the source of the shimmer. The pulse grew stronger, painting the surrounding crates in a warm, unnatural hue. She stood frozen, the noise of the market fading into a distant, inconsequential buzz. The cart was alive with a light that defied the morning sun, and she was anchored to the spot. The golden light surged again, brighter this time, washing over the top layer of the cart. Ashley leaned in, her breath hitching in her throat. She searched for a hidden lamp or a trick of the reflection, but found only produce. Then, the movement began. A single apple, resting near the edge of the wooden crate, shifted its weight. It rolled an inch to the left, then stopped. She blinked, convinced her eyes were playing tricks in the shifting light. The apple shivered, its skin rippling like water under a breeze. It turned slightly, facing her directly. A voice emerged, not from the air, but from the fruit itself, thin, crisp, and impossibly clear. "Pick me, Ashley!" the apple commanded. The sound cut through the market noise like a blade. "I am crisp and sweet." Ashley recoiled, her fingers losing their grip on the canvas tote bag. It slipped from her hand, hitting the cobblestones with a heavy thud. The contents spilled out, but she did not look down. She remained motionless, her gaze locked on the shimmering fruit. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened, leaving her unable to form a single word. The market around her continued its roar, oblivious to the voice that had just claimed her attention. The apple's voice still echoed in the narrow aisle, but it was not alone for long. Beside the crate, a bunch of bananas began to vibrate. The golden light intensified, crawling up the stem and spreading across the curved yellow skin. A high-pitched, melodic chime erupted from the fruit, sharp and energetic. "Choose me for energy," the banana declared. The sound was rhythmic, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the golden light. Ashley took a stumbling step backward, her heel catching on an uneven cobblestone. She braced herself against a nearby stall, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked from the apple to the banana, her eyes widening until they burned. The air around the cart grew heavy, charged with a static hum. She reached out, then pulled her hand back as if burned. The banana shimmied, its peel glowing with a brilliant neon yellow hue that outshone the morning sun. It was not a hallucination. The market's sounds, the shouting, the footsteps, the clatter of carts seemed to warp and bend around the impossible conversation. She stood trapped in the center of the anomaly, watching the fruit pulse with a life of its own. Every movement of the banana was deliberate, swaying in time with the chime. The banana's chime still vibrated in the air, but the ground beneath the stall shifted. A patch of dark, damp soil near the center of the wooden crate began to churn. Ashley watched, paralyzed, as a tip of bright orange broke through the surface. It was a carrot, pushing upward with a steady, rhythmic force. It shook off the clinging dirt, exposing its smooth, vibrant surface to the morning light. The carrot did not chime like the banana or speak with the crisp clarity of the apple. Its voice was deep, resonant. "I am essential for your vision," the carrot stated. The words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Ashley leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the vegetable. The carrot pulsed with a soft, amber glow that matched the rhythm of the cart. She felt a strange pressure behind her eyes, a sharp clarity that made the world around her seem suddenly more defined. The carrot's resonance had barely settled when the apple snapped back, its skin flushing a deeper, more aggressive shade of red. "Vision is secondary," the apple retorted, its voice sharp and impatient. "Energy is the foundation of all movement," the banana countered, swaying violently on its stem until it nearly tipped over. The apple vibrated, letting out a low, buzzing hum of annoyance. "I am the classic choice, the crisp standard of every market." The banana shimmied, its yellow peel glowing with a frantic, pulsing intensity. "Standard is boring. I provide the fuel that keeps the world turning." They began to jostle, the apple rolling slightly to block the banana's light, while the banana leaned forward to reclaim the space. The stall groaned under the sudden, erratic movement. Ashley watched, her hands pressed tightly against her sides as the air grew thick with the friction of their disagreement. The apple's voice rose in pitch, demanding priority, while the banana's chime turned into a rapid, discordant series of pings. The wooden crate rattled, the boards straining under the weight. Every time the apple spoke, the banana interrupted with a sharp, metallic ring. The rhythm of the stall was no longer a steady pulse. It was a frantic, irregular beat. It was a frantic, irregular beat that mirrored the escalating tension between the two fruits. A bright, textured sphere rolled into the center of the fray. It was an orange, and it did not wait for an opening. "Vitamins, I am the source of health," it boomed, its voice thick and citrus sharp. The apple immediately doubled its volume, the red skin pulsing with a frantic, strobing light. "Crispness is the only metric that matters!" it shrieked. The banana, not to be outdone, began to vibrate so rapidly that it blurred against the wooden backdrop. "Energy! Focus on the energy!" the banana chimed, a high-pitched, relentless sound that cut through the deeper tones of the orange. The air around the stall became a tangled web of competing frequencies. Ashley took a step back, but the noise followed her, pressing against her ears like physical weight. The orange rolled over the apple, the two fruits colliding with a thud. "I have the most nutrients," the orange bellowed, its voice overlapping with the apple's persistent, rhythmic demands. The banana joined in, a constant, shrill pinging. Every word was a jagged spike of sound. Ashley gripped the edge of her tote bag, her knuckles turning white. The chorus was a wall of noise. The carrot, buried deep in the soil, tried to force its way to the surface. It vibrated, attempting to emit a low, grounding frequency to calm the others. "Listen to me!" It pulsed, the sound dull and muffled by the earth, but the orange simply rolled over the carrot's patch, burying it further beneath the dirt. The apple and banana ignored the intrusion entirely, their voices climbing higher, sharper, and more desperate. The orange joined them, its citrus-sharp tone blending into a jagged, dissonant roar. The air around the stall began to shimmer with the intensity. It was no longer a debate. It was a wall of sound that vibrated in the very floorboards beneath Ashley's feet. She pressed her palms against her ears. The apple shrieked about crispness, the banana pinged with relentless energy, and the orange boomed about its nutrients, weaving into a singular frequency. The market square seemed to tilt as the sound intensified. Vendors nearby turned their heads, their own shouts silenced by the unnatural cacophony. Ashley's jaw tightened, her breath coming in short, jagged bursts. She stood frozen, her eyes darting between the shimmering, pulsing fruits. The sound hit a frequency that made the very air vibrate. Ashley could not take another second of the screeching, booming, and pinging. She lunged forward, her boots skidding on the cobblestones, and slammed her palms down onto the wooden edge of the stall. She drew a sharp, ragged breath, filling her lungs to their limit. "Stop!" she roared, her voice cutting through the cacophony like a blade. She held her hands high, fingers splayed, demanding absolute silence. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The apple stopped its frantic pulsing. The orange ceased its booming. The banana went perfectly still. The silence was sudden, heavy, and absolute. Ashley looked at the shimmering, waiting fruits, her chest heaving. She made her choice. "I will take all of you," she declared, her voice firm and clear. The reaction was instantaneous. A wave of golden light rippled across the crate as the fruits erupted into a collective, high-pitched cheer. The chaotic tension vanished, replaced by a strange, rhythmic humming that seemed to pulse in time with her own heartbeat. The fruits were no longer rivals. They were waiting, eager to be gathered. Ashley dropped to her knees, the rough cobblestones pressing into her skin. She ignored the grit and focused entirely on the cart. It was glowing with a steady, rhythmic golden light, pulsing like a slow, deep breath. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches above the wooden surface. As she moved her hand, the air felt thick, like pushing through warm honey. She began to trace the first letter in the air, A-P-P-L-E. Her voice was steady, each syllable matching the cadence of the cart's golden thrum. With every letter she formed, a trail of shimmering dust hung suspended in the space before her. The apple on the top layer shivered, its skin brightening to match the intensity of her tracing. She repeated the sequence, her rhythm locking perfectly into the cart's pulse. The sound of her voice became a physical force, drawing the golden light outward until the word hung in the air, glowing and solid. She finished the final letter, and the air snapped with a soft, electric pop. The connection was set. She felt the magic humming through her fingertips. Ashley did not pause. She turned her gaze to the banana, which was now vibrating with a sharp yellow light. The air around her hands grew heavy, charged with static that made the fine hairs on her arms stand up. She began again, her voice rising to meet the cart's frantic tempo. B. The letter hung in the air, a jagged spark of gold. A. The energy surged, pushing against her palms like a physical weight. N. She pushed back, her knuckles white, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. A. The ground beneath her boots trembled as the cart began to sway. N. The light grew blinding, casting long dancing shadows against the market stalls. A. She shouted the final letter, her voice cracking with the strain of the effort. The word B-A-N-A-N-A, solidified in the air, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the cart. The vibration was no longer just a sound. It was a force that rattled her teeth and made the very cobblestones hum. She felt the magic thickening, swirling around her like a living current. The stall groaned, the wood straining under the pressure of the spell. Every time she breathed, the golden light flared, matching the rhythm of her lungs. The atmosphere was electric. The air snapped. The tension that had held the fruits in place on the wooden slats vanished. First, the apple detached, defying gravity as it arched through the air in a perfect glowing trajectory. It did not fall. It flew, landing with a soft thud inside the canvas bag. Then, the banana followed, peeling itself away from the bunch and spiraling through the air like a yellow dart. Ashley watched, her hands still raised, as the stall erupted into a frantic dance. Oranges rolled upward, defying the slope of the cart, and launched themselves toward her. They moved with a strange, purposeful intent, a blur of vibrant colors streaking through the market square. The carrot followed, wiggling free from the soil and vaulting over the edge of the crate. Each piece of fruit seemed to possess its own momentum, a chaotic but rhythmic swarm that converged on the open mouth of the bag. The air was filled with the sound of rustling skins and soft impacts. Ashley stepped back, her eyes tracking the impossible motion. The fruits were not just falling, they were choosing their spots, stacking themselves with precision. The bag began to bulge, the fabric straining as the harvest poured in. It was a surreal spectacle of motion, a frantic, golden-lit migration that turned the market stall into a fountain of produce. Every leap was deliberate, every landing secured as the fruits rushed to be gathered. The bag reached its limit, yet the fruits continued their relentless migration. The weight inside the canvas shifted, pulling the fabric to one side and dragging Ashley's shoulder down with it. She struggled to keep her footing as the bag grew heavy, its contents pulsing with a rhythmic golden light that seemed to vibrate against her hip. Beside her, the wooden cart began to protest. The structure groaned, the joints of the frame creaking under the sudden uneven distribution of mass. It started to wobble, the front left wheel lifting an inch off the ground before slamming back down against the uneven cobblestones. The cart tilted, its base sliding sideways as the remaining produce inside surged toward the edge. Gravity took hold. The cart lurched, leaning further toward the path, its wooden legs scraping harshly against the stone. The movement was sharp and uncontrolled. A crate of greens slid off the top, spilling across the ground with a loud clatter. The seller, who had been watching from the far end of the stall, dropped his ledger, his eyes locked onto the swaying frame. He lunged forward, his arms outstretched, his voice rising into a sharp, desperate scream. "The cart is tipping! Everything is going to fall." The cart swayed, a heavy wooden beast losing its battle with physics. Ashley felt the strain in her own muscles as she clutched the overflowing bag, the weight dragging her toward the cobblestones. She looked at the cart, then at the ground, where the spilled greens lay in a chaotic heap. The seller's shouts echoed off the market walls, a frantic, high-pitched alarm. Then, her eyes swept the perimeter. A group of children stood just feet away, their faces pressed forward, wide-eyed and silent. They were watching the spectacle with an intensity that cut through the noise of the market. Ashley locked eyes with a young boy near the front. She saw the way he tracked the golden pulse of the fruit, his hands twitching with an unspoken desire. A realization hit her. The cart was not just tipping. It was overloaded by a force that needed to be distributed. The magic was too concentrated, too heavy for one vessel to contain. She looked back at the cart, which groaned, its frame twisting under the pressure. She needed to lighten the load, and she needed to do it now. Her grip on the canvas bag tightened. She took a sharp breath and prepared to break the cycle. Ashley lunged toward the children, her hands diving into the canvas bag. She pulled out a handful of apples and oranges, the fruit still humming with that rhythmic, golden pulse. She thrust them into the nearest pair of hands. Then another. The children gasped, their fingers closing around the glowing skin of the produce. As the weight left the bag, the effect on the cart was immediate. The wooden frame, which had been twisted at a sickening angle, snapped back into place with a sharp, resonant crack. The front wheel slammed down onto the cobblestones, finding its footing once more. The cart stopped its frantic wobbling, settling into a steady, grounded position. The seller let out a long, ragged breath, his hands dropping to his sides. Around the market, the tension that had gripped the air evaporated. The children stood in a small circle, clutching their snacks as if they were treasures. They beamed, their faces lighting up with wide, genuine smiles that mirrored the golden glow of the fruit. The chaotic noise of the market returned to a normal, rhythmic hum. Ashley stood back, watching as the kids took their first bites. The air felt lighter, the scent of fresh produce replacing the sharp tang of panic. The cart was safe, the fruit was distributed, and the frantic energy of the morning had transformed into a quiet, shared joy. The market square faded into a blur of distant chatter as Ashley turned onto the path leading home. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in deep hues of orange and violet. She walked with a steady, rhythmic gait, the canvas bag swinging lightly against her side. The weight that had strained her muscles only moments ago was gone, replaced by a strange, lingering lightness. She focused on the silence of the road, a stark contrast to the earlier cacophony of vendors and magical fruit. She whispered them to herself, testing the shape of the words against the cooling evening breeze. Apple, banana. The rhythm of the language seemed to pulse in time with her footsteps on the gravel. The horizon darkened, and the first stars began to prick through the velvet sky as she neared the edge of her neighborhood. The final stretch of the path led directly to her front door. Ashley slowed her pace as the familiar wooden frame came into view, standing solid against the deepening twilight. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold, smooth surface of the door handle. The street behind her was quiet, the town settling into the stillness of the night. She paused, her hand hovering, listening to the soft rustle of the canvas bag against her side. Just as she prepared to turn the key, a faint, melodic voice drifted up from the depths of the bag. It was thin, like the sound of dry leaves skittering across pavement, yet perfectly clear. "Eat healthy every day," the voice whispered, vibrating against her palm. Ashley stood frozen for a heartbeat, the weight of the words sinking in. She looked down at the bag, then back at the door, the lingering magic of the market square still humming in the air. A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. The day had been long, filled with impossible sounds and shifting colors, but this final reminder felt grounded and right. She took a breath, the cool night air filling her lungs, and felt the last remnants of the day's tension dissolve. She was home, and the lesson remained, tucked safely within the fabric of her bag. Ashley turned the key and stepped into the dim, quiet kitchen. She set the canvas bag on the wooden table and carefully lifted the fruit out, one by one. The apple, the banana, the orange, and the carrot sat in a neat row, their skins catching the soft glow of the evening light. The air in the room felt different, charged with the rhythmic hum she had heard in the market square. She traced the surface of the table with her fingertips, feeling the faint, lingering vibration of the day's events. The house was still, yet it felt alive, as if the spirit of the market had followed her inside. She took one last look at the fruit, then turned toward the entrance. She reached for the heavy handle, pulled the door shut, and slid the bolt into place. The lock clicked, solid and final. Outside, the world faded into the shadows of night, but inside, the kitchen remained warm and vibrant. She let the day come to a peaceful end.